in today's episode of First Shoes, I'm going to look at something that caught my eye over the weekend between the Giants and the Suns, and it's to do with the wingers. Now, in the past, wingers have normally come off the line pretty quickly. They've been used as a handball release. They've been used in multiple ways, whether it's defensive or whether it's attacking. But on the weekend, particularly and I'll explain in the detail in the videos, particularly on the wings where the rucks were facing, they held back. And Giants dictated terms because on the opposite side, they ran defensive. So I thought, is this just a one-off? Is this just because of the Giants and the Suns on the weekend? Even looking at Adelaide and both the top sides, so Adelaide and Brisbane, they're doing the same thing as well. So it got me thinking, why are clubs doing this? Why are they holding back on the wings? And it's to allow for the centre bounce clearances to not have any interaction. So I'm going to go through some clips. I'm also going to show you how defensively you can set up to accommodate this. And I'm also going to look at how the Suns could have impacted the centre bounce. Let's get in the clips now and I'll show you what I mean. So I'm just going to run through this tape. This is the start of the Collingwood versus the Crows over the weekend. And I want you to take particular interest in both the wings. So in this situation, both rucks are going at each other. So it becomes a bit of it's not like they're facing the other way. And I'll show you clips of what I mean by that. But just watch the wings as I roll the tape. So as I roll the tape, watch the wings. So you've got side bottom and curtain on the bottom. And then you've got the wings up the top. Look at that movement. No movement whatsoever. They're not rushing in like in the past. And it's quite interesting that I caught this on the weekend. But it's very common amongst all the clubs. Look how spread out they are. They didn't even move. They're still on the line. So I thought I'll have a look at Brisbane and see what they're doing. So this is the Brisbane versus Freo game. Look at this. Both hands on their hips. The ball has been bounced. There is no movement whatsoever. It was quite, look at this. Not even moving. Not even moving. Players are on the move in the centre. So it's quite interesting to see that it's not only just a common thing I saw with the Giants and the Suns, but it's actually quite evident throughout most of the clubs in the competition, and particularly the top sides. So over the weekend, when I was commentating this game, I noticed that this winger, particularly the Giants winger, would hold back. And they dictated terms a lot. The reason for this, and it's always been the case with Briggs always starts, so if the umpire's coming out this way, Briggs starts there. If the umpire is going back this way, Briggs starts there. So what happens in this situation, with Briggs starting there, the hit zone is going to be here. So that's why you don't see anyone behind the rucks. I've said this before, it's almost like it's a triangle formation like that. So that's where the hit zone is going to be. But quite interesting on the weekend, what the Giants player did here on the far wing, from where the camera crew is, they would come straight here on a defensive mindset. And they dictated terms a lot. Whereas this winger here just held the width, didn't run in, didn't rush in on an attacking 45. They just held. And what it did, the first 4 centre bounce clearances were by the Giants. Tom Green exited. Finn Callaghan exited. And there was 2 others. I think Bedford might have come it might have come off this way. And Darcy Jones was another one. But they left all this space clear. And by allowing that space, when going inside forward 50, it was all clear. So, roll the tape here. Look at that play here. Thomas, I think. Just holding. But then the defensive winger comes here. So this was a strategy because Witts is quite clever and he likes to hit it over his head. He's done a number of times where they get their run going forward like that. So very smart to put the defensive winger there. But the other wing just held it. And I think, it's scary for me to say this, but I think Dimmer was out coached in the fact that they needed to have some presence. They needed to come off the line and be able to force them. So Tom Green comes through. If Weller was able to come in on a defensive side, he might have forced him to go out a bit further. But in this situation, the kick is going quite central. So I didn't force him at all. So here's the next one. Bedford just stands there. Just watch the patience. But then this winger here is the one that comes defensively. And this is why the defence is so important, because this is Noah Anderson and he's looking to go that way. So this is where Witts is really smart when he's able to drop it over the head, because theoretically and also very easy to read is that because both rucks are facing that way, that's where the hit zone's going to be. So that's why Witts likes to tuck it over the top. But watch Bedford. Just holds. Caniglio comes out. Look at that. And look at the space that Bedford has created by not coming in off the wing. But there's a defensive setup to make sure that you don't allow any run to come through from the Suns. So I love this setup, and it happened quite a lot on the weekend. In fact, nearly every centre bounce had happened. So this is why I was saying that I think that Dimmer was out coached and goes to the midfield, and they've got to do their homework in case they come up against him in the finals. So this is once again the two wingers on here, Weller and Thomas. But the Suns have just kicked a goal. So this is halfway through the third quarter, and they'll get a bit of momentum going. They've just kicked a goal, so it's gone back to the centre. And you can see how they've set up. This is where I think, and this is the educational part, what I would like to see is the winger, in this case it's Weller, to come here, at least be defensive. And then on this 45, you can see everything that's happening. So you can see what this wing is doing to be a release, and you can also be a defensive pressure in case they exit this way. But they just stood there. They didn't do anything. And when you've got momentum, you've just kicked the goal, you've got to win it out of the centre. This is what the Suns are trying to do. Finn Callahan, great bodywork here to push Rao under the ball. But then he exits into that space that Weller could have got involved in. So if Weller comes in on the 45, so he's facing this way, he can see what his opposing winger is doing to be possibly a handball receive. But then you have presence off the forward line here. But also what it does, it forces Finn Callahan to possibly go wide and kick around his body. Instead, he's going inside forward 50, pretty much in the sweet spot of the corridor. And it is so dangerous to stop. This ball goes down forward 50, and look how dangerous that is. Instead of it actually the ball getting kicked out here, because he's been forced to go out on his left foot towards the boundary. It's hard to screw a kick. It's going inside the V. And I just thought that on the weekend that they were outplayed, they were outcoached in that aspect of the game, which was so critical. And this goes down and they score a goal. So I just wanted to highlight that. It's a short video today, but it's quite an interesting one in the fact that a lot of clubs, particularly the ones in the top 8, are doing this. So the wingers are holding back. They're allowing for those mids in and under, those 4 mids or the 3 mids to try and get a clearance. But when they exit, whether it's to the top of the screen wing or the bottom of the screen wing, they've got clearance. They've got no activity coming through. I think from a defensive point of view, that winger still needs to come in. If you know that, in particular with the Giants, you know that Briggs is hitting towards your wing, you've just got to step in the line. You've got to be able to then force them to go wide. And then if they use their handball receive as your opposition player, a la the winger, at least you can force them. Instead, what happened on the weekend, the Giants won the ball because they stood back off, because the Giants really, really smart by doing that. They dictated terms. They just created this corridor. When those players won the ball, was it Tom Green, Finn Callahan, and they were going inside forward 50, kicking to the V. So an interesting video today, and something to watch come finals time.